I'm working on these different blogs and videos about things we've always heard but never really understood. And in these blogs or vlogs, I'd always talk about maybe something that we either heard as a kid, and it meant a certain thing to us as a child, but how does it have kind of like a new meaning for us as an adult, right? Because when we're children, we understand things as a child, but when we become adults, things take on new meanings and we have different revelations for that. Now, one of the things I wanted to share today is a riddle that I heard when I was younger. And there was the owners of this ice cream parlor. There was the owners of the ice cream parlor that lived next door to us. And we used to hang out over there all the time and chill with the owners. And it was pretty cool because they would always feed us. So that was always cool. But I remember they had a deli in the back, on the back side. And that's why we would go there and eat. So we're sitting there one day and he gives me this riddle. And he says, if a tree is chopped down in the woods and it falls and you're not around to hear it, does it still make a sound? If a tree falls in the woods, and no one's around, does it still make a sound? And so the obvious answer is yes. It still makes a sound, right? It still makes a sound. Whether it's a quiet sound, a loud sound, or whatever it is, it's going to make a sound, because when something crashes down, it normally has some type of impact. When it hits the ground, it makes some type of sound. Now, the reason that it's a riddle is because a lot of times the response will normally be, well, if no one's there, how do you know it made a sound or not? How do you know it made a sound or not? Now, the reason that we think this way is because in our being, in our humanness, we feel that if we are not present, if we didn't see it, if we didn't hear it, if we didn't watch it happen, then it didn't exist. If we didn't see it, if we didn't hear it, watch it happen, then it ceases to exist. So we had to truly be a witness for it to happen. And so that's kind of a fallacy, right? So this is kind of a delusional way in which we tend to live. It's kind of like how we say nowadays that if it's not on social media, it never happened. If you don't post it, it never happened. Well, the truth of the matter is that it did happen. It's just that sometimes we tend to invalidate things because we did not see it. So we can't find the proof on the internet. If we can't find the proof on social media, then, well, we tend to act like, well, if I didn't see it, then I don't believe it. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. And so the key is that you just don't believe it. But because you don't believe it, then it doesn't exist. Because you don't believe it, then it doesn't exist. Which is a very narcissistic way of thinking. It's a very narcissistic way of thinking. So probably should have gave a disclaimer that this is not going to be probably the most popular thing, right? It's not going to sit very well with a lot of people, but that's the truth, right? It's a very narcissistic way of thinking. So it's kind of how some people are when it comes to their belief in God. You don't see God. You don't have a relationship with God. You are the one who tends to believe that you create everything in your life. you make your own way in everything. You exist because you created the path for you to exist. And so whatever that belief is for you, and because you do not believe that God has anything to do with your being, then God doesn't exist. And so if someone says, well, God exists, you will argue that he doesn't because of your own beliefs, which means that you can't allow someone to believe what they believe. You have to insist that they believe what you believe, and vice versa, and vice versa. Again, very narcissistic way of living. Very narcissistic way of living. So, going back to the issue with the tree, when we think about it, like I said, if something falls, it makes some kind of sound, right? Because when something falls, it creates a vibration. And so these vibration makes waves, sound waves. Now, the sound waves are going to either be very faint or it can be very loud. Either way, there is some type of vibration and sound waves that are existing when something crashes down to hit something else. When something crashes down to hit something else. But just because you were present, you're thinking, well, if nobody's around, then it didn't exist. So you are thereby trying to negate truth. You are trying to negate truth because you're not there. So it's already been proven that these things exist. It's already been proven that this is what happened. It's scientifically proven, right? There are actual facts that are in place to show that these things exist, right? That this is truth. But because you were not present, because you did not have that firsthand experience, you are negating truth. Now, going back to what I said about God, that's pretty much how we're living in this time. And not just in this time, but that's how we tend to live. We say, well, if I did not have an encounter, if I did not have an experience, then God doesn't exist. If I don't know him for myself, if I haven't experienced him for myself, if I haven't had a relationship with God for myself, then he doesn't exist. Now, it doesn't matter. It won't matter to you that there has been historical evidence. It doesn't matter that there has been historical evidence that God exists. It doesn't matter that there has been historical evidence that Jesus walked the earth. It doesn't matter that there has been historical evidence that of God's existence. It doesn't matter that there has been historical evidence of things that have happened biblically. So a lot of things that are, things that are written in our Bible that people have gone back and said, wow, okay, there is evidence that these things have happened because, for instance, it's 2023 and something happened centuries ago and you were not present. You're negating the fact that it happened. So no matter what someone tells you, no matter what experts say, no matter what truth has been proven, you are still walking around in delusion because that is what you choose to accept. You choose to not accept any form of truth. That's what's happening. You're choosing to not accept any form of truth. Someone can lay it in front of you. They can tell you to read it. And it doesn't matter how many ways from Sunday they can put it in your face. You will still fail to accept any truth because your mind has been made up that if you were not there, it did not happen. That's really what happens. That's why we're not accepting God, because we're truly feeling that if we didn't see it ourselves, it doesn't exist. Now, like I said, it's a very narcissistic way of living. It's a narcissistic way of being. And so therefore we are now walking around trying to be God in our lives and eliminating or trying to eliminate the existence of God, which you cannot do, by the way. You cannot do, by the way. But that's essentially what you're doing. You're trying to eliminate the existence of God. And then anytime someone says something, you are walking around in your delusion, in your self-inflicted delusion, and thereby trying to pull everyone in to your self-inflicted delusion in your fallacy world, because you reject truth. You are literally rejecting truth. That's what you're doing. Now, how do we turn this around? The only way we can turn this around is if there is a part of us that actually desires to want to see something different. You have to want to see something different. You have to want to know that God exists. You have to want to know that God is real. You have to want to know that God loves you. You have to want to know that you can have a relationship with God. You have to want to know and desire to know that Jesus died on the cross for you so that you can have an everlasting life. You have to desire to want to know those things, because if you never desire to want to know, if you never desire to want to have, then you will always reject, right? It's like you're so full of yourself, you're so full of what it is that you desire to have, what it is that you desire to be stuck on, that no matter what someone tries to give you, you're going to reject it, right? So think about a child, or think about a person who continuously feeds themselves with things that are no good for them. And I think I mentioned this in another video. You're constantly feeding yourself with things that are no good for you. So when someone tries to feed you truth, they're trying to feed you something that is knowledgeable and factual, you're going to basically regurgitate it, because you're saying, no, I don't want that. Your body's like, I don't want that. I'm not trying to hear that. Ain't no way in the world, because you've already had it made up in your mind. You cannot argue and then say, but I want to know who God is, because at that point, no one's going to argue with you when you are stuck on wanting to disprove truth. No one is going to argue with you while you are headstrong about disproving truth, because that would be insanity on the other person's part, right? That would be insanity on the other person's part, because if I'm standing there arguing with a brick wall, that makes me insane. It doesn't make you insane because you keep trying to disprove something. It makes me insane that I'm constantly trying to have an argument or trying to talk to you, knowing that you are not ready to listen. This is why we say people have a hardened heart. You have a hardened heart, because everything that is being said, you are rejecting it. It is literally falling away. It is falling to the ground. So your heart has to be softened. One is going to start with you wanting change. You have to have a mind made up that you want something different. You have to have a mind made up that although the truth is coming to you and it might be challenging for you to chew on, challenging for you to accept, that you're still at least willing to receive it. You still have to be willing to receive it, because if you're never willing to receive it, then you're always going to reject it. If you're never willing to receive it, you're always going to be you're always going to be rejecting it. And that's just the plain truth. So you have to be willing to accept the possibility of change. You have to desire to want change for change to happen in your life. You cannot expect people to come and have conversations with you, try to feed you the word, try to talk to you about God, or whatever that looks like that you claim that you want in your life, until you make up your mind that you actually want change. Because if you continue to live and walk the way you do, in the narcissistic way, the rejecting God and believing that you are the God of your life, and walking around in your fallacy, right? Walking around in your make-believe delusional world, then you will always have that. That is what you will have. And in fact, you will walk around in your hell on earth. That's all you will ever tend to have, until you decide the one day, this is enough for me. This is not the life that I want to have. I actually want to have something better. I know that there is better for me. I know that there is change for me. I know that there is greater for me. I want peace. I want hope. I want love. I want a love that knows no bounds. I want peace that surpasses understanding. I want joy. I want the joy of the Lord, something that no one can ever take away from me. Once you decide that these are the things that you want, then you will truly be open-minded to start receiving what it is that people have for you, so that way they can start sharing God with you. And until that day, you will continue to be that brick wall. You will continue to be that brick wall. And then you will complain, well, no one's ever talking to me. People are mean. People are evil. Christians are evil. Christians are mean. Christians are rude. Christians are this. And you will talk about everybody. Because right now there are so many videos that are out here where people are defaming, right? It's like you're out here slandering men and women of God. Literally slandering men and women of God. But you have a delusional life. You're narcissistic. You are so far from God, it is ridiculous. But you dare to put your mouth on men and women of God. How dare you? How dare you? How dare you? How dare you? We need to open ourselves up, people. We need to open ourselves up, because we are truly living in a time where we've been living out the word, but we are living out a time where it says we become lovers of ourselves. We are delusional. We reject God. We reject His word. And then anytime somebody tries to give you the word, you talk about them. We project our feelings, our emotions, our hurt, and our pain on other people that try to come in and share the love and the word of God with us. And that is not how, that ain't working. It's not working. It's not working. You're going to keep finding yourself walking around in this living hell. It's not working. It's not working. We need to do some changing up. We need to do some changing up. The making of the videos talking about people, men and women of God, when things are happening with men and women of God, people that you have watched, people you watched from the beginning, and the moment they say something that you don't like, the moment they do something that you don't like, you're blasting them, and that is how you're getting your fame. That's not working. What you should be doing, you want to get your fame, make a video and pray for them. Gather the people and pray for the men and women of God, and see what thus saith the Lord. See what thus saith His Spirit, and how you can be guided by His Spirit in order to help continue to lift up these men and women of God. That's what you can do. That is what people will do if you're truly standing on the word. But the way that we're doing it now, to where you're trying to get social media famous by tearing people down, that is not it. That is not it. We need to change. We need to change. We definitely need to change. We definitely need to change. We need God. We need God. We shouldn't be tearing each other apart. We should be lifting each other up. We can't be out here being narcissists. We can't do that. That's not it. That's not it at all. That's not it at all. Because you're doing more damage. So that ain't it. That's not it.